Welcome. This is another in a series of videos with Aubrey Daniels from Aubrey Daniels International, based on the book Oops, Management Practices That Waste Time and Money and What to Do About Them. In this video, we'll talk about the challenges facing thousands of companies and millions of workers involving downsizing and the inevitable company mergers that follow. This is a dangerous time. Companies are looking for quick hits. They're trying to cut expenses, so they whack people. Why doesn't that work?
Well, the reason they do it is they do get a quick hit because they can see an immediate response in reduction of expenses.
And it may seem like there is absolutely no other alternative than to do that.
Right. But the problem is that long term, the effects it has on the company doesn't accomplish what it really intended to accomplish.
That's because why? It does reduce payroll, at least at the outset. Why wouldn't it do that over the long term?
Well, many times what happens is that you've got the same amount of work to be done by fewer people. So we end up needing more people to do this. They realize, well, we need more people to do this. So they hire people back as contract employees, usually paying them more than they paid them earlier.
Or they outsource it.
They outsource it, and they have an increased expense to do that.
Not to mention the people who are left behind, that is the survivors.
Well, survivors, you have to be very careful about how you do this, in the sense that the people that are left look at how you treat the people that are gone, because they assume it's possible that I could be next. So we end up with a productivity problem, because rather than focus on what they're trying to accomplish, they're beginning to think about, well, should I look for another job, or other things that.
Well, it's the gazelles, when the lion eats the gazelle or whatever, all the other gazelles are standing back there.
That's right, exactly, yes.
So what's the answer then? I mean, there are times when you absolutely have to reduce expenses.
Well, I think when you do it, first of all, you need to treat the people that are downsized very well. In other words, be generous with the people that are outsized, because everybody's looking to see, well, if I go, this is how I'm going to be treated. The other thing you have to do is to begin to make sure that the people that are left are positively reinforced for taking on additional work, additional assignments, so that in fact they are energized to pull the company out of the doldrums.
Is it, there's a couple of things that maybe need to be thought of before we get to this point. One of them is, can all the employees be involved in helping set the strategy for the downsizing?
Well, I think that this is something that most companies don't do. And that is to go to people and say, look, here's our problem. Now, how should we do this? Now, we've had a number of companies that have done that, and basically what happens is people will say, well, okay, I'll take some time off without pay. Or I'd be glad to work a shorter work week if in fact we can do that without laying people off. And it's amazing how creative people can be in terms of doing things to decrease expenses and increase revenue at this time.
And even further back in the operational food chain, there's the issue about running a lean company to begin with.
Well, this is the idea that you should be lean sizing every day. In other words, do we have the least resources to produce the best product? And we should be constantly leaning our organization in that way. Thomas Gilbert at one time, talked about the fact that if you can afford to do this in good times, then you should be able to do this all the time.
There was an interesting bit in the book about government workers and the thought that perhaps you could pay them for the rest of their careers if they could figure out a way for no one to do the job that they do. Was that basically what the deal was?
I think this was an article that I remember Art Buchwald, the
yes, that was it,
columnist for the Washington Times for many years, said he proposed that a way to downsize the federal government would be to give any employee who could figure out a way to eliminate his or her job retirement at full pay, because the cost of keeping somebody on the payroll is 2-3 times what they're paid. And so if people could figure out a way to eliminate their job, then we could retire them and save money. And a department manager who could do this would get a 10% of the department budget in addition to being downsized.
Which might on the surface appear to be madness, but
It would
it's
work.
cheaper.
I'm confident it'd work. You know, I say that many people who don't work for the government would not like the idea that you've got young people who've been retired when in fact they would like to be.
Downsizing's cousin, M&A, mergers and acquisitions. That's another thing that looks
Yes.
really good on paper.
Yes.
Think of the synergies that we're going to get between two companies that combine, and the waste that we can eliminate because we can we can whack
Yep.
jobs that overlap each other. Again, does it work?
Well, they work in a sense that this is going to be something that's going to continue for some time. We're going to be merging, you know, all over the place. The problem, again, is not whether to do it, but how to do it. And as it turns out, what happens is that the acquired company is usually feeling punished.
It looks great on paper if this merger is going to happen, but it doesn't really work out that way in 80% of the cases. Why?
Well, the problem most of the time is that the people that are being merged don't particularly like it. Yahoo didn't want to be taken over by Microsoft because they thought, you know, we would lose our identity, and the idea
There is some truth in that.
It is, of course, that many people are punished by it. And what you want is you want to create a new organization where both parties feel a part of it, where they've helped design it, where they've come up with ideas to make it work better. And typically one organization says, here's the way we're going to do this, as opposed to trying to make it so that both parties are positively reinforced by the experience.
And the most important word to remember when companies merge is not synergy, it's culture.
Culture is really patterns of behavior. And people say, well, we want the cultures to match. Well, they don't have to match in the beginning, but they have to match in the end.
So how do you do that?
Well, you find ways to make it to the benefit of both parties to have the new organization operate. It's not just one-sided where, you know, one company,
The winner.
states the rules. Here's the way we're going to do this. What you do is you get them together so that we begin to look at everything we do and say, we've done it this way. Well, we've done it this way. Well, is there a better way? If we come up with a better way, then both parties have an investment in it, and it works better.
And this is a situation where you're trying to assess rules and processes that don't work, measure them, throw them out.
All operation, where we look at, if you think about an organization that's being acquired, you know, one way to get them energized is to ask them, what are the things that you've been doing that don't work? So that the day you take over, you say, you don't have to do these things anymore. And so they can see that, whoa, this is really going to be better. All the things we thought were wasteful, we're eliminating, you know, a lot of them. And so now we have hope that the new organization is going to be better than what we had in the past.
In fact, all of the 13 chapters of this book kind of can be reduced to two words, and they apply here. Engage employees. And critical.
The way you engage employees is to make sure that the environment is a positively reinforcing culture. That when people do things, when they have accomplishments, that they're recognized in some way that's meaningful to them.
Aubrey, thank you. This is another in a series of videos from Aubrey Daniels International based on the book Oops, Management Practices That Waste Time and Money and What to Do Instead. Available now online at aubreydaniels.com.